If there's one thing that wargaming is good at, it's maintaining a steady flow of new content into the game throughout the year, especially when it comes to ships. We get a steady flow of new tech line ships and new premium ships and new reward ships and resource ships throughout the year. That, of course, does leave quite a few ships getting, well, forgotten about, just because they may not be the best or the shiniest or the most crazy. They kind of get pushed to the sidelines, and you'll be surprised how fast some ships do truly get forgotten about, some of them really overnight. So I've assembled a list of my 5 most, I guess, interesting, if you will, forgotten ships, or ships that I think most of you have probably forgotten about. Now, for this list, every single ship with the exception of one is still available, and I wouldn't call any of these ships downright bad. They just may not be the best, and that's why they've got kind of, shoved to the side. But I do think most of them are quite interesting. And again, 4 out of the 5 are still available for purchase today. So if you find yourself interested by one, you may want to check it out a little bit further. Would I suggest buying any one of these ships off of just this video? No, but again, if it sounds interesting, go ahead and check it out. So let's go ahead and get on into it. But right before we do, if you do find yourself enjoying this video at any points throughout it, make sure you drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. We're getting pretty close to 60,000 subscribers, and we will be doing a giveaway when we get there. All right, into the list. Starting at number 5, we have the Tier 8 Premium American Heavy Cruiser, the Anchorage, and this is the only one that's currently not available because she was a dockyard ship. Now, I think the Anchorage is probably, in my opinion, one of the most underwhelming dockyard ships. What she is, essentially, it's a Buffalo, a tier lower, with a longer reload on the main battery guns. She has a 15.5 second reload time with those main battery guns, and she trades her radar for smoke and torpedoes. So I guess they were trying to, answer the question, what if we took an American cruiser and gave it smoke and torps instead of radar? The answer is, well, it's pretty mid by most aspects because, well, you give up the good DPM because of the 15.5 second reload time. You literally have a reload that's over half of what most battleships have at Tier 8, and you're trading out a good degree of the utility of the American line, that American long duration radar, for smoke and torpedoes that aren't really that great because the torpedoes only have a 10-kilometer range, which on most other cruisers, that's pretty workable, but on the American cruisers, considering a good chunk of their playstyle is, well, I'm going to sit behind this island because I don't really have the armor to be going out in the open water. It's not really fantastic. Granted, for like self-defense and such, definitely, but not really worth trying to sneak around in the open water and get those torpedoes off on other ships, so you don't really use them that much. Because, again, American cruisers typically don't find themselves in the open water. Although I guess with the smokescreen, you can do that. And the smokescreen is a modified smokescreen. It's got a longer active period, and it, of course, has a long duration when it is deployed. So it's kind of useful there, but it's kind of all, again, killed by that longer reload time because that's the American cruiser, heavy cruiser thing. You have, good caliber guns, 200 millimeter guns and above. We need to higher tier that have a good reload time, especially when you get to the Des Moines, and that's just kind of killed here with the Anchorage's reload time. And even when the Anchorage was out and it was the active dockyard ship, you really didn't see too many of them at all during her dockyard time. And even when the dockyard ended, there was maybe one every like 3 or 4 games. And then she really just kind of disappeared after that. So it's an interesting little, kind of mix up with the American cruiser formula, but it didn't really work out. And I think they tried it once more with another premium ship. I want to say the Rochester, but other than that, they seem to have abandoned this idea for, kind of switching up American cruisers in that way. And I think that's a pretty solid decision because, again, wasn't really that great of a ship, and I might as well just play the Buffalo instead, because that's pretty much what the Anchorage was, again, but with smoke and torps. Alright, going down to number 4, we have the Tier 7 Soviet battleship, the Poltava. The Poltava was, well, I've actually just realized now that I'm sitting down to record this section of the video that she's not available either anymore at the moment of recording, which is kind of upsetting because she is a pretty solid tier 7 Soviet battleship. She's no Sinop, but the Poltava is more of a battle cruiser. She's quick, she's quite long. If you park her next to an Iowa, I believe she's either the same length as an Iowa or very, very close to being the same overall length as an Iowa class. So she's a longest ship at tier 7, but she's fast, she's fairly maneuverable. Again, she's a big ship, so she does have a big turning circle radius, but she gets 14-inch guns at tier 7, which aren't overly large by any stretch of the imagination, but you do get the Soviet shell ballistics with them, and a very maneuverable Soviet battleship. It's kind of like a tier 7 Soviet Roma from my experience, because the guns, on paper, they look like they're fairly accurate, but from my experience in game, they're not really overly accurate. But if you can get close, I mean, from close range, it's obviously harder for dispersion to screw you over. Plus, they do have a 28-second base reload time as well, so if you can find cruisers that are broadside or battleships that are broadside, the shells are going to butt into their armor and do their thing, so she's pretty decent for that. And given that she is fairly maneuverable, she can go 29 knots at tier 7, then you toss the speed flag on there, and you're going north of 30-something knots at tier 7, with, again, a tier 7 battleship that's still fairly tanky and such. She is pretty decent for, trying to deal with the submarines and such that, these mid-tier ships have to deal with so much now because of her speed and her maneuverability. You can, in most cases, especially if you run into, tier 6 submarines and such, outrun their torpedoes and such if you need to do that. But, I mean, she is a pretty fun ship to play. I'm not really sure why she was removed, because she definitely isn't crazy powerful or anything. Again, 14-inch guns at tier 7 aren't really that large. Her guns aren't really that accurate from my experience. She's just a really fun, solid tier 7 Soviet battleship. Although I guess, tier 7 is kind of, everything's kind of overshadowed by the Sinop at tier 7, because the 16-inch guns with the Soviet armor and such. It's a pretty hard combination to beat, but if you want kind of more of a battle cruisery gameplay with the Poltava, yeah, because it can't sit there like the Sinop can. The Sinop can sit there, bow in, and tank for days like every other Soviet large ship. The Poltava's more of a, well, again, it's a battle cruiser. It's more of a stay on the move, get your guns going, keep them in action type of gameplay style. And I find that to be a quite fun gameplay loop here with the Poltava. It's sad that she isn't available anymore, but if you do wind up getting it in a Santa container, or if they bring her back for some type of event, she might be worth checking into if you want that battle cruiser play style, but more in a Soviet mid-tier battleship. I think she's worth looking at if you like that type of gameplay. She is, like other Soviet ships, very vulnerable in the middle, because again, that is their thing. So keep that in mind when you are playing her, if you do manage to pick her up. All right, going down to number 3. We have the Tier 9 Soviet destroyer, the Neustrashimy. Man, the Neustrashimy is one that I really don't understand why this ship never really caught on. I guess it was because she was a steel ship back in the day, and you had so many better options to pick her up for steel, but she's a coal ship now. And the Neustrashimy is a really, really comfortable destroyer for myself to play. Why? Because she's kind of a in-between destroyer, where she can do torpedo boat things if you build her for that. She can also do gunboat things if you build her for that. And I don't mean gunboat like, Kalbaros gunboat. I mean, more traditional, find an island or use your smoke screen, which you do get, to be a nice little, machine gun, right? Although, again, she's not going to be breaking any records, so you gotta use your torpedoes to still kind of, keep up with the damage race, if you will. And what it really makes her appealing to players that, maybe you have a bunch of tier 10s and such, and you've grinded up a couple of destroyer lines, and you're still a relatively new destroyer player, is that she does get a super heal. You can reprint 75% of your ship's HP with a single click of a button with the Neustrashimy, which makes her so much more approachable compared to, again, so many other tier 9 destroyers where a good chunk of them don't have heals. So if you slip up, you're just again doomed for the rest of the match because, well, either you're going to die from slipping up a little bit because destroyers don't really have huge margins for error, or you're going to be down to like a couple of thousand HP and you're just going to, well, be kind of just sailing around twiddling your thumbs because you can't do anything. The neutral shimmy, you can, recover from that with that super heal. That of course allows you to also outgun other destroyers, because if it's a one-on-one gunfight, unless you run to, again, like a Harugumo or a Smallland or a Groningen, the absolute DPM hoses at tier 9 and tier 10, you can push your repair button and, well, you have another ship while they don't. So it's very good for that. And again, the torpedoes aren't really that bad. They do have like 10.5, 10.7 kilometer range with the consumer, which you can get down to 5.8. Pretty usable. They go 66 knots, and again, I haven't really built into them. You can build into them to enhance their performance that much more. So she's a really solid tier 9 destroyer. Now, she is a coal ship, so she is free, but that does mean you have other coal ships that you obviously are looking at when you're going to pick one out, so that may be why she still is fairly unpopular. I thought that when they moved her from steel to coal that was really going to up her popularity because she's a lot easier to obtain. It's a hell of a lot easier to get enough coal to get tier 9 premium than it is to get a tier 9 steel premium, right? But evidently not. Granted, again, there's no shortage of tier 9 premium destroyers at the moment, so that may be why you don't see her all that much. But again, if you want a destroyer that's a zombie destroyer that you can, again, if you're at higher tier, you've ground up 1 or 2 DD lines, you're looking to maybe branch out, she's maybe worth checking out. Alright, and that brings us down now to number 2, which is a tier 8 British battleship, the Vanguard. The Vanguard is a ship that man, I really, really wanted this ship to age well, but she did not age all that well. Is she still viable in today's World of Warships? Yeah, she is. Is she as good as she used to be? Unfortunately not. That's probably why she's been forgotten, and you don't really see too much of her at tier 8 anymore. I think I've seen a Vanguard in the last couple of months, maybe one time when I'm not playing it, because man, this ship was pretty fun back in the day when she came out. She's a battleship with a cruiser's rudder shift time. You get 8 15-inch guns at tier 8, which isn't bad. You get a pretty good reload on it, pretty decent reload on it, I should say, and you use that with your high degree of maneuverability to kind of play it like a very, very large cruiser. But unfortunately, her guns, from what I've experienced and from what I've read about her online, are pretty trolly for the most part. And tier 8 battleships, yeah, they're not going to have the most accurate guns, but when you only have 8 15-inch guns, and that's it, the ship doesn't get anything else. You don't get any type of other consumables. You get a heal, and you get 8 15-inch guns. That's it. The secondaries are not worth building into. AA isn't great or anything. That's it. It's maneuverable, and it's got 15-inch guns with a decent reload. That is everything about the Vanguard. And her HE is a little bit better than normal because of, British battleship, right? So you find yourself just zipping around at the back of the map, maneuvering like a cruiser, throwing HE at everything, and watching your shells bracket most of the shots left, right, and center. So it is a very frustrating ship to play. And her thing, too, is that her Citadel is pretty easy to get at, and her turret angles are terrible, so you have to show your broadside to get all 8 of your guns on target, which you need to do because, again, the guns are very trolly. So you get your 8 guns on target, your Citadel's exposed, and you have to quickly, whip the ship around to hide your Citadel from the enemy ships, because if you don't, you're going to get vibe checked. But of course, with how higher tier has gone, we've got a lot more, 457mm guns and above at tier 8, tier 9, and tier 10 now. I mean, in that matchmaking bracket, right? Since the Vanguard has been introduced, it hasn't really been a great day for the Vanguard. And it's really sad because this was the last battleship constructed by, the kill date being laid down and being finished. I know Jean Bart technically was finished afterwards, but the Vanguard's kill was laid down way after the Jean Bart's kill, so I give it the Vanguard. And, having more accurate guns, I think, would have been a better reflection of the last battleship ever constructed and such. She's maneuverable, which, that's pretty good. Yeah, something built in the 50s is going to be more maneuverable than something laid down in the 30s, right? But, yeah, it's just, she hasn't aged well. if you like playing battleships like big cruisers, she's maybe worth checking out. But she does have it pretty rough in today's World of Warships, so there is most definitely that. So sadly, she has been, well, forgotten. And finally, our number 1 slot is the Tier 9 French cruiser, the Carnot. The Carnot is, wow. The Carnot is something, alright. She's a French cruiser that has absolutely been surpassed several times by even the French tech line at this point. There's not real, much need to play the Carnot when we have the French battle cruisers out now, and they're so much better than the Carnot. The Carnot is okay, better-ish at close range with her AP shells, because she does have pretty good AP. But the ship is huge, it's massive, you have a turret in the back, it's really awkward to get that third turret in the fight a lot of times when you have this huge broadside that absolutely stands up out the water, and you get chunked from every which way. Doesn't have torpedoes either. It's fairly fast when you do have the speed boost going, and it can do some pretty funny things with its speed and maneuverability, but then you just look at the Marseille line, and it's like, wow, I'd rather go get a free Marseille than wasting my time or money getting the Carnot. And even the Brest is better than the Carnot in my opinion at tier 9 than the Carnot is at tier 9. So it's just kind of why would I even bother getting it right now than just going down the Marseille line. Even when she did come out, she was not popular at all. I got the ship, obviously I played it for my review of her, and even when I was playing her like the day she came out, I think I maybe ran across like 4 others throughout the entire evening, which is super unusual, because if you guys haven't been able to tell, with the Johnston coming out, when a new ship comes out, players usually race out to buy it, and you'll see it a bunch on the server for probably the next couple of weeks. Then it'll kind of die down, and you'll see them every now and then. But the Carnot, I mean, I don't see this ship anymore. Well, actually, funny enough, when I did sit down to record this video, I actually ran into one in the when I was getting the Vanguard B-roll. I was like, of course, when I'm making a top 5 forgotten ships video, I'm gonna run into my number 1 in my number 2 slots B-roll, of course, But yeah, I really don't see it that much. And again, I think it's more of, it probably has been forgotten, because why would you bother picking it up over just grinding out the tech line, waste your resources, time, or money to get it when you can literally get something better for free in the tech line. But, if you want to try out a large cruiser, a little bit of French tossed in there, maybe. I don't think it's really worth getting, because again, the Marseille line is better. Again, I literally think the Brest is better than the Carnot. It's got more of that Frenchness to it with the engine boost and the wonky gun setup and the reload booster and all that jazz. But guys, those are my top 5 premium ships you've probably forgotten about. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. What would you add to the list? What would you remove from it? Let me know all that jazz in the comments down below. Hope you guys have a wonderful Monday and a wonderful rest of the week. I hope to catch you guys in the next one.